Hey folks, welcome back. I'm going to do a response video to a video made by a friend of mine named Stephen Tony, whose YouTube name is TVNASH. And about 9 or 10 days ago, he made a video where he ranked the horror films of Barbara Steele. And he tagged me specifically because he knows I'm a big fan of hers. So very happy to do it. Sorry it took me so long to get around to doing this. So I'll start out from highest to not so high. And it's impossible to discuss the career of Barbara Steele, horror films or otherwise, without talking about Mario Bava's classic Black Sunday, an Italian film made in 1960, original title La Maschera del Demonio, and edited and redubbed and rescored in 1961 by American International Pictures. And both of these versions have a lot of advantages. So I would advise fans to check both of them out. But it's not only just a beautiful film and very groundbreaking. It launched the career of Mario Bava as a director, and it certainly made a cult actress, a cult figure of Barbara Steele, who up till then had only done small parts in 4 English films and a little bit of television. And she was perfect for this, much to her eternal regret, because I think that she has never been comfortable with this image, which has been sort of hooked onto her forever. She's never escaped it. But yeah, these films are just incredible. Or this film, I should say. All right, in any version, it's good. So next up, I would say one of her most uh, sensual and powerful performances is in Antonio Margheriti's Castle of Blood from 1964, originally known as La Danza Macabra. And in this film, she plays a woman who is a ghost, and a very sexual ghost who doesn't love the fact she's dead. Stop her. And black and white cinematography, very creepy, very strange. Forget the gaps in logic when you watch it. It's a great film. I would say this film, as far as ranking, I would tie it with Roger Corman's The Pit and the Pendulum from 1961, where she has a supporting role. Corman put her in this film because of what he saw of her in Black Sunday, and he wanted her for a small part. And even though she's not in it very often, as Stephen pointed out in his video, I think it works because her presence is so ghostly and mysterious, and in a way, her presence is the most important in the film because everybody's always talking about her. It's all about her. So when she finally comes back into the story toward the end, she kind of takes over, and it's a very powerful performance, very powerful imagery. So, and this movie was very influential on the Italian Gothic horror movement in the 1960s. Next up is Ricardo Freitas' The Horrible Dr. Hitchcock, which has recently been remastered and beautifully done. And in this one, she plays a victim, and yet with the imagery and the close-ups and her ethereal beauty, she is still very much the dark, mysterious lady. And this is a very strange film about necrophilia. And she made this in about a week and a half when she was taking a break from working with Federico Fellini in Eight and a Half, which is just a completely different kind of film than what she was doing here. So, yeah. And Freda made uh, kind of a sequel, but not really, about a year later, called The Ghost, or its Italian name, Lo Spettro, which keeps some of the names of the characters, like Dr. Hitchcock, for example, and has a couple of the same cast members. But in this one, Barbara's character is a lot more complicated. She is both a victim and an evil character in the same person. And she does a beautiful job. It's a very physical part, very sexy. So, yeah, highly recommended. In 1966, she did this movie called Nightmare Castle, which is available on many different forms. They finally did a good job remastering it both on DVD and Blu ray. And in this one, she plays two characters who happen to be supposedly stepsisters, but strangely enough, they look exactly alike, just different colored hair. So she's a victim and an evil character who comes back from the dead. And in a way, it's kind of the same thing done over again, but beautifully done. And she's in almost every scene. And this is the one film in the 1960s where you get to hear her actual voice. in one of the characters. So that's kind of interesting. Now, next up, as far as the caliber of her performances, I'm going to put the 1991 revival of Dark Shadows, which only lasted for about 12 episodes, but it started out with a 2 hour movie, and she's really terrific in this. And it's nice to see her come back to the horror genre after such a long time. Directed by Dan Curtis. Okay? Absolutely worth seeing. And next up is another film she made for Ricardo Freda, or I'm sorry, Antonio Margheriti. This is The Long Hair of Death, which has also been remastered beautifully. And this one, she plays a vengeful ghost, starting out as a victim, and then she turns it around and she wreaks vengeance on everybody in the entire movie, which is kind of fun. Beautiful cinematography again. And next up is a film that has also been recently remastered beautifully, An Angel for Satan, which is actually right at the end of her Italian horror cycle, 1966. I'm not sure I would actually call this a horror film. It's more of a gothic mystery, but it has one of her best performances. And once this time she plays a woman who is a victim. She is possessed by the evil spirit of someone else and starts doing all kinds of really nasty stuff. Okay, good movie. And next, Barbara did a small role in her only slasher flick in 1980 in Silent Scream, in which she's only in it during the last maybe 1/3 of the film, and it's a silent performance because she doesn't have any dialogue at all. But she plays, well, I won't tell you what she plays. Hopefully, you want to see it someday. But she was around 40 years old when she did this and hadn't been working a lot, so it was just she sort of came out of nowhere to do this incredible part. And I'm not a big fan of the slasher genre, but I have to say that this was actually very well done. She is terrific. Okay. And going back to the 60s, kind of a minor film that she did, which is definitely fun to watch, Terror Creatures from the Grave, which is kind of a dumb title for an Italian title that translates as Five Graves for a Medium. And Barbara doesn't play the medium, it's her husband. And it's not a great film, but again, she looks terrific. And when she's in it, she's fantastic. But it's kind of a minor film and a minor part for her, unfortunately. And I think one of her least um, rewarding films from the 1960s is The She Beast from 1965, directed by Michael Reeves. And she's only in this movie for about 15 minutes. And again, when she's in it, she's terrific. But the film itself is not that great. Now, this is a good remastered version, which has a commentary featuring Barbara, and I think the commentary is actually better than the film. So I would recommend it for that. Right? Not a great film at all. A lot of people rave about Michael Reeves as a director, and I don't think he was that terrific. That's my opinion. Anyway, next up is a film she made in England in 1967 or 68 called The Curse of the Crimson Altar or The Crimson Cult. And she has a supporting role in this. The stars of the film, Boris Karloff, Christopher Lee, and Michael Goff is also in it. And the tragic thing about this is that Barbara looks terrific. She's all dressed up as a witch in this ridiculous outfit here, and she's fine, but she has no scenes with Karloff and Lee, which is a real letdown for horror fans. And the film itself is not all that good. It's based on a H.P. Lovecraft and H.P. Lovecraft novel or story called Dreams in the Witch House, and it's very colorful, worth seeing, but it's not really a great film. Anyway, okay. Next up is a film that I wouldn't watch this film ever if she were not a part of it. This is David Cronenberg's Shivers, a Canadian film made in 1976 or 77. There's so many different dates for it. Also known by the titles They Came From Within and The Parasite Murders, which I think was the original title. It's all about scientists who create this parasite that they enters the body and it turns people into sexual maniacs, right? So Barbara was put in this mainly for to give it name value, and the film is creative and funny in some ways, but it's also kind of sickening. But again, she's fantastic. She's beautiful, and her scenes are very striking. So I give it sort of a tentative recommendation. And finally, one of the last films that she made, she didn't star in a film for years, and then finally came back to do this in 2011. I think it was actually made in 2010. The Butterfly Room, directed by an Italian director whose name I probably can't pronounce, but it's in English, and it's a real letdown. A lot of us were very hopeful about her doing this, starring in a film again, but it doesn't use her well. She's not photographed well, and the story is just so full of holes and illogic that it's a big disappointment. I think she was disappointed as well. But I met her in 2011 at a convention, a horror hound convention, right after this film had been made, and she told me that it was probably going to be released in about 4 months. It took a long time for it to actually be released. I don't think it ever had a commercial theatrical release. I know it was available at Family Video for a while because I saw it on the shelves, and it's been seen at festivals, things like that. But I can't really recommend this, only for the most diehard Steele fans, because I think you'll be disappointed. But again, if you're curious, here it is. So those are my rankings. In spite of mishaps like the Butterfly Room, Barbara Steele is an amazing actress, still on number one, and I would advise you to check out her filmography if you're not familiar with her. So thank you very much for watching. Sorry if the lighting in this room is bad. I know it's not a very good place to do videos, but and thanks again to Steve and Tony for tagging me in the video. If anybody else would like to join in, talk about Barbara Steele, what you think about her films, please do. Comments are welcome.